Under the blazing sun, a well-dressed boy riding a motorbike enjoying the afternoon. Wolfgang, he is the main male lead of the movie. Wolfgang is 14 years old, handsome, extroverted and at a rebellious age because of his parents' divorce, so he has to follow his mother to live with his stepfather. The stepfather has a daughter and the mother is also pregnant with the stepfather's child. Because of the lack of father's love, Wolfgang's relationship with his mother is extremely close. Also for this reason, the stepfather did not like his wife and stepchild having an intimate relationship that made him feel hate and want to make him to concentration camp. That day, in the house having a party, Wolfgang and two friends came home to look at porn magazines and were caught by their stepfather. The stepfather skillfully licked his ring finger with his tongue and punched Wolfgang in the face. This was like an act of barbarism. Fortunately, his mother arrived in time and pulled his stepfather away. Wolfgang snuggled into his mother's warm arms as if nothing had happened. His stepfather used the excuse that he read comics, so he wanted to send him to a reformatory. The pregnant mother who is in the convalescence period has no way of taking care of her child during this period, so she agreed to her husband's suggestion. Before leaving, his mother made Wolfgang his favorite chocolate cake, and promised to bring him home for Christmas. The innocent Wolfgang brought a happy mood to a trip away and ate the cake his mother gave him and then looked out the door of the moving carriage, feeling the atmosphere of infinite freedom that awaits life in the reformatory. Little did he know that what awaited him was hell. The car stopped beside a small vegetable garden. This is where Wolfgang will live in the future. Upon receiving Wolfgang as the nice white-bearded director, the dean received Wolfgang's file, which lied that Wolfgang was a liar, did not know how to correct mistakes and many other vices. It was written on one side of the paper. The director himself rolled the paper back into the flower bed and told Wolfgang everything would start from scratch. Wolfgang still does not know that behind this honest pretense lies a blatant lie. Entering the reformatory, they confiscated all of Wolfgang's personal belongings. Soon he felt the malice coming from the people in the reformatory. This reformatory was nothing like his imagination. The prison system, the guards using the whip, the temperaments of the children, even their scary eyes. Food makes people feel nauseous. At night when he was brushing his teeth, Wolfgang's defense of a bullied weakling made him understand everything here. When eating, besides the dean and the two guards, the only person who is qualified to light a cigarette for the warden is also the elder brother. When he bullied another kid named Marco, Wolfgang stepped forward to stop him, but Marco not only didn't thank him, but he also said malicious words to Wolfgang even though he had just rescued him. Marco's harsh criticism made Wolfgang extremely sad. One evening, there was a black boy named Enritem, who was very pleased with Wolfgang's actions this morning, very much wanted to befriend Wolfgang. Before going to bed, Enritem also gave Wolfgang a cookie, hoping to be protected by Wolfgang, but Wolfgang didn't like it and refused. The next day, everyone gathered at the manually operated train deep into the swamp. That place is their emotional land. There is a lot of coal there, and after the children are sent to the reformatory, they must receive the unified management, divided into free labor of the business. Coal business here. Here, the so-called sensibility of reality is nothing more than a word of violence and abuse. A group of teenagers with a hoe taller than themselves went to dig coal, and if they didn't work carefully, they would be beaten by the guards with a whip. During the break, they sat on the ground smoking, their faces covered with mud. Only Wolfgang's eyes were glowing. It's only been 2 days that Wolfgang has felt that life here is like a mess. On the way back, Wolfgang untied Enritem's belt that was wrapped in the wheel, and when the guard wasn't paying attention, he turned and ran into the forest. But in the dense forest is a swamp, there is no way out. Turning his head to see the warden behind him, he thought that it was impossible to escape from this place. With no other choice, Wolfgang could only return silently. The fact that Wolfgang escaped alone prevented the other children from having dinner, so Wolfgang was counted out by a group of children. Wolfgang knelt on the ground to suffer everyone's fights under Ben's cheers. Even his only friend, Enritem, became one of those who beat Wolfgang. Still, Wolfgang was determined to leave this place. Returning to the bedroom at night, after being beaten, Wolfgang could only sleep on his stomach. Enritem brought cookies to apologize. Wolfgang threw the biscuits in Enritem's hand. and told knows the thing to leave. At this point, Ben came over, couldn't help but advise Wolfgang, telling him that running away was useless or resisting was useless. The promise of a mother, the warmth of family members is just a lie to deceive people. In this place, obedience is the only way to survive. Turns out this tall handsome Ben is not a bad person either. It was only because he was abandoned by his family that he soon gave up all dreams of returning home, single-handedly staying in this place to become the internal manager for the teenagers here. His violence is really just resigned to fate. Wolfgang did not agree. He believes that his mother will pick him up for Christmas. A few days later, during one of his labors, Wolfgang found the goddess in the hearts of all the boys in the reformatory. English, the beautiful daughter of the principal. English has a very hot body. Wolfgang knows she can contact the postman, so he follows her into the forest to ask her to help send a letter of help to her mother. At this time, the principal appeared. English grasped Wolfgang's hand and placed it on his chest, scolded Wolfgang for harassing her again and took the letter from Wolfgang's hand. This time Wolfgang harmed everyone not having dinner. Ben was powerless to Wolfgang. Since Wolfgang's arrival he has been constantly causing trouble. If you're not causing trouble, you're on the way to causing trouble. This time Ben did not hit him but stayed to question him. Have you ever thought about how the children behind will have to endure until tomorrow? Actually, Ben is not bad, he just doesn't want to cause more trouble. What he does is all good for the children below to have food, that's all. Worried Wolfgang, he promised Ben that he would take care of everyone's dinner. He ran to the vegetable garden that the director loved to pick up tomatoes one by one. Don't forget to pick up the tomato and show it off to everyone in the room. It was while Wolfgang was concentrating on picking, that the director appeared again. He grabbed his neck and forcefully pressed his head into the pot of water. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Everyone in the room also held their breath. When Wolfgang couldn't take it anymore, the director let go of his hand and cruelly turned away. Wolfgang reached out again to pick tomatoes. At this time, the warden took a whip and went to beat Wolfgang a lot. Even though his whole body was injured, a stubborn person like him still lying on the ground laughing non-stop. In the end, he was beaten and couldn't get up, still holding a small tomato in his hand. When Ben carried Wolfgang home, his body was covered in blood, his fingers trying with great difficulty to reach out to reveal a bright red tomato. His perseverance won everyone's recognition. When everything was settled, the letter Wolfgang asked for English was discovered. The director forced Wolfgang to read the contents of the letter in front of everyone. The children laughed at first but stopped, moved by the content of the emotional letter. When he read the sentence, "Mom, I miss you so much," all the children sadly bowed their heads. This time Ben didn't hit him, but stayed to question him. Have you ever thought about how the children behind will have to endure until tomorrow? Actually, Ben is not bad, he just doesn't want to cause more trouble. What he does is all good for the children below to have food, that's all. Worried Wolfgang, he promised Ben that he would take care of everyone's dinner. He ran to the vegetable garden that the director loved to pick up tomatoes one by one. Don't forget to pick up the tomato and show it off to everyone in the room. It was while Wolfgang was concentrating on picking, that the director appeared again. He grabbed his neck and forcefully pressed his head into the pot of water. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Everyone in the room also held their breath. When Wolfgang couldn't take it anymore, the director let go of his hand and cruelly turned away. Wolfgang reached out again to pick tomatoes. At this time, the warden took a whip and went to beat Wolfgang a lot. Even though his whole body was injured, a stubborn person like him still lying on the ground laughing non-stop. In the end, he was beaten and couldn't get up, still holding a small tomato in his hand. When Ben carried Wolfgang home, his body was covered in blood, his fingers trying with great difficulty to reach out to reveal a bright red tomato. His perseverance won everyone's recognition. When everything was settled, the letter Wolfgang asked for English was discovered. The director forced Wolfgang to read the contents of the letter in front of everyone. The children laughed at first but stopped, moved by the content of the emotional letter. When he read the sentence, "Mom, I miss you so much," all the children sadly bowed their heads. The rector's step-by-step coercion aroused the children's will to resist and the desire to be free. Together they sang the song of freedom. But what's the use of this small wall of shouting? The children screamed until their throats were full in exchange for the whole group being locked up for a long time. Ben once again reminded Wolfgang not to fantasize about his family, and burned the only picture of his mother. Wolfgang looked at the shattered photo with great pain. Finally able to withstand Christmas, everyone gathered music in the synagogue. Not only Wolfgang, everyone couldn't go home. Mom's promise is just like a bubble in the end. English sat in front and gave Wolfgang a key to help him know that this was the key to open the door to freedom. While everyone was not paying attention, Wolfgang crept to open the door to look at the beautiful night sky and free white snowflakes, but just as he was about to leave, an arm was placed on his shoulder, the director. This time the dean stripped him of all his clothes, tied him up with iron chains, and brutally beat him until he passed out. The wound on the back is painful to see, while the loss of pain and nostalgia adds to the longing. He had a wonderful dream, in which he saw himself and his mother playing and running on the sand. They even overlapped each other. That beautiful dream has become a spiritual support for him. The mother who is far away is the motivation for him to fight to the end. Wolfgang's injury just got better. English came to him again, saying that she was going to study abroad, and could not see each other again. After saying that, he hugged him. This action made Wolfgang's heart burn. He pushed English to the ground to vent out all the excitement that broke out on her. English struggled to escape Wolfgang and ran away without looking back. Not long after, Wolfgang began plotting a third run. This time, he took advantage of the guard's inattentiveness and immediately caught the guard's eye with a shovel. Saw the guard lying on the ground unmoving. Wolfgang quickly led Enritum to escape. They ran through the forest, crossed the mud pit, followed the water and ran until it was dark before they found themselves back to the starting point. Wolfgang desperately took Enritum back to the reformatory and hid in the stables. No matter what happens, it can't be stopped. The two originally intended to give up. When they suddenly discovered a horse-drawn carriage, the two climbed into the carriage and successfully escaped. But Enritum has no home to return to. He wants to go home to Wolfgang but is refused by Wolfgang. While I was kicked out of my stepfather's house, how could I let you bring another person back? So he firmly refused. The two just split into two paths. After returning home, he hugged his mother. His stepfather was not happy, and was about to call the reformatory, but was stopped by Wolfgang. At the dinner table, Wolfgang ate like a hungry tiger, and told his mother everything he had encountered in the orphanage. But before he had finished his bread, the dean had already arrived. The one who sold him out was the abandoned Enritum. Dinner ended, mother and stepfather argued again. Seeing her son like a scared bird, she was extremely heartbroken. She negotiated with the director for a long time and wanted to see with her own eyes how the situation in the reformatory was. So the next day, stepfather drove Wolfgang and mother to the reformatory. After arriving, Wolfgang got out of the car but his mother refused to get off. In suspicion, his stepfather locked the door. Wolfgang desperately pulled the door open, then took off his shirt to reveal his wounded body, but his mother still didn't turn around. Seeing the car slowly drifting out of sight, all his hopes were gone. He didn't expect this to be a place so that his stepfather would send him back to the reformatory again. What awaits him will be more cruel punishment. The one-eyed warden began to take revenge in a crazy way. He led Ben to take Wolfgang to the deep forest, ordered him to dig a hole to bury himself alive, then let Ben scoop up shovels of dirt to bury him. The cries for help and scolding finally stopped. Ben felt guilty and knelt down, unable to fill any more. The warden retrieved the shovel, ruthlessly burying Wolfgang in the ground. After they left, a pair of leather shoes walked up to the side of the hole, none other than the director himself. The director dug the dirt on Wolfgang's face with his hand and lifted the bridge up. Wolfgang trembled and snuggled into the abbot's arms regardless of whether it was good or bad. The director used sweet words to comfort him. It turned out that the dean had grown up in a reformatory since childhood. Maybe the dean had seen his former self from Wolfgang. Seeing that he was buried, Enritum was extremely sorry for his denunciation. In a torment of conscience that was difficult to escape, Enritum hanged himself. Ben was heartbroken, reading the will that Enritum had left, in which, except for despair, there is still despair. At this time, the warden entered the room to deny responsibility, jokingly saying that the person who died earlier was not a person but shouted a weak dog. His actions completely infuriated everyone. Ben leads him to the ground, knocks him to the ground, steals the key and tells everyone to run away. And Wolfgang, who had always been immersed in escape, sat down on the ground, but the scene before him didn't say anything. In the face of violence, he never bowed his head, even bravely dropped his weapon. At this point, his mother's abandonment has made him a lonely soul, protesting against Wolfgang that has no meaning anymore. He understood that even if he tried to go home, he would be abandoned again. Anyone who ran away ran away. A new group of teenagers were sent to the reformatory, only Wolfgang remained in the camp. A few years later, Wolfgang naturally gained Ben's power. Control each group of teenagers brought in. Counting people every day, chanting slogans to help the guards, living a boring life. It was not until one day that Wolfgang's stepfather died that he had the opportunity to return home again. This time he went home with no joy, no anticipation, just coming home like a machine. Going into the yard, he saw his mother's figure again, saw his brother was born, and also saw his favorite chocolate cream cake on the dining table, but going through so many years made him feel estranged from his family and younger brother. He felt like he was just redundant. He was silent, carefully wrapped the chocolate cake on the table and left this house forever. On the way, he met his childhood friends again. When they wanted to try the cake on his hand, he punched him hard. Wolfgang has completely turned into a sensitive and violent person. He climbed into the car and drove towards the unknown future, but where was his destination, even he himself did not know. Outside the window he saw dozens of young men going to the reformatory to work. This swamp has not only bone-chilling water and deep mud, but also violent crime that illuminates society's great disregard and inescapable suffering. Maybe in the future, no matter where he goes, it will be difficult to get out of the swamp nightmare, or maybe he will gradually forget about it. The soul that lost love and freedom can only be cured by time, and don't forget to click like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next movies. Goodbye.